The envelope trembled in Sarah Mitchell's hands as she sat in the third row of the Ellen DeGeneres show. For 3 months, she had carried this letter everywhere, hoping for a moment that seemed impossible. Now, as Ellen interviewed Academy Award winner Matthew McConaughey about his latest film, Sarah felt her courage wavering. The letter contained words that could change everything, but saying them out loud meant facing a truth she had spent 18 years avoiding. It was a picture-perfect Tuesday afternoon taping. The Ellen Show studio buzzed with its signature energy, blue stage lights dancing across walls adorned with the iconic Ellen logo. 400 audience members filled the tiered seating, their excitement palpable as Ellen, radiant in a crisp white blazer with subtle silver threading, matched wits with the charismatic Texas actor. "So Matthew," Ellen said, leaning back in her chair with that mischievous grin that had launched 1,000 viral moments. "You've played a lot of different characters, but I heard you recently discovered you might be playing a real-life role you never knew about." Matthew's signature laugh filled the studio. "Well, Ellen, life has a way of surprising you. You think you know your story, and then someone shows up with a different version of it." The audience chuckled, thinking this was typical celebrity banter. But Sarah Mitchell knew exactly what Matthew was talking about, because she was the someone with the different version. Sarah clutched the worn envelope tighter. Inside was a letter written 18 years ago by her teenage mother, along with a DNA test that had arrived 3 weeks earlier. The results had shattered everything Sarah thought she knew about her life, and now she sat 30 feet away from the man who might be her father, watching him joke about the very situation that had consumed her thoughts for months. "Family's a funny thing," Matthew continued, his voice taking on that thoughtful tone that made him more than just a movie star. "Sometimes the people who matter most to you are the ones you haven't even met yet." That was Sarah's breaking point. "Mr. McConaughey," the voice cut through the studio like a bell, clear and desperate. Ellen paused mid-sentence, her eyebrows raising as she searched the audience for the source. Matthew shifted in his chair, following Ellen's gaze. In the third row, Sarah Mitchell had stood up. She was 33 years old, with shoulder-length auburn hair and green eyes that, in the right light, looked remarkably familiar. She wore a simple blue dress and held an envelope against her chest like armor. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, her voice stronger now that she had started. "I know this isn't how things work, but I need to tell him something." Ellen's production team whispered frantically into their headsets. This wasn't part of the script, this wasn't planned. But Ellen had learned to trust her instincts over 20 years of television. And every instinct told her this moment mattered. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Ellen asked, her voice automatically gentle. "Sarah Mitchell. I'm from Austin, Texas." Sarah's hands shook as she spoke. "Mr. McConaughey, I think you might be my father." The studio fell into that particular silence that only happens when 400 people simultaneously hold their breath. Matthew McConaughey, the man who had charmed audiences with his easy confidence and philosophical musings, went completely still. Ellen's mouth opened slightly. In 20 years of hosting, she had seen proposals, reunions, and revelations, but nothing quite like this. "Sarah," Ellen said carefully, "this is a very big thing to say on television. Are you sure you want to do this here?" Sarah nodded, tears beginning to stream down her face. "I've been trying to find the courage for 3 months. My mother passed away last year, and before she died, she gave me this letter. She said if I ever found the strength, I should give it to the man she loved but could never tell the truth." Matthew leaned forward in his chair, his casual demeanor replaced by intense focus. "Sarah, what's your mother's name?" "Rebecca Mitchell, but you would have known her as Becca Collins." She was 18 when she worked craft services on your first movie set in 1991. Something shifted in Matthew's face. Recognition, memory, understanding. Ellen watched this exchange with the fascination of someone witnessing something unprecedented. She had interviewed thousands of celebrities, but this wasn't about fame or promotion. This was about family, truth, and the courage it takes to speak words that can't be taken back. "Matthew," Ellen said softly. "Do you remember her?" Matthew ran his hand through his hair, a gesture millions of fans would recognize, but which now carried the weight of something much more personal. "Becca," he said quietly. "Sweet, smart girl with red hair and freckles. We spent 3 weeks filming in Austin. She was studying literature at UT, working the movie set to pay for school." He looked directly at Sarah. "She had eyes just like yours." Sarah's composure cracked completely. "She loved you," she said through her tears. "But she was afraid you'd think she was trying to trap you. She was afraid it would ruin your career before it started. So she disappeared." Ellen stood up from her chair. Every instinct told her to go to commercial, to handle this privately, to protect both her guest and this stranger from the intensity of such a public moment. Instead, she did something that defied every rule of television. She walked down into the audience. The cameras followed Ellen as she made her way to Sarah's row. The audience parted to create a path, sensing they were witnessing something sacred. "Sarah," Ellen said, now standing directly in front of the young woman. "This letter, can you tell us what it says?" Sarah unfolded the envelope with trembling hands. The paper inside was yellowed with age, written in the careful handwriting of someone choosing words that would last a lifetime. She wrote, "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're finally old enough to understand. Your father is Matthew McConaughey. I met him when he was just starting out, and I fell in love with his laugh, his kindness, and the way he talked about wanting to make the world a little more interesting. But I was 18 and scared, and I thought telling him about you would ruin everything he was working toward. I've watched his career from a distance, and I've seen the good man he became. If you ever find the courage to tell him, know that you come from love, even if that love was too complicated to last." The studio was completely silent, except for the sound of people crying. Matthew McConaughey, the man who made philosophy sound cool and had charm enough to light up movie screens, was staring at Sarah with an expression of wonder and pain and hope all mixed together. Ellen turned to Matthew. "What are you thinking right now?" Matthew stood up slowly and walked to the edge of the stage. The distance between him and Sarah was less than 20 feet, but it represented 33 years of missed moments. "I'm thinking," Matthew said, his voice thick with emotion, "that I just found out I have a daughter, and she's brave enough to tell the truth on national television." He looked directly at Sarah. "And I'm thinking your mother was wrong about one thing. Having you in my life wouldn't have ruined anything. It would have made everything better." Ellen felt tears welling in her own eyes. "Sarah, how do you feel right now?" "Terrified," Sarah laughed through her tears, "and hopeful, and grateful that she's not here to see me crying on television because she'd be mortified." Matthew laughed, and for the first time since Sarah's revelation, it was his genuine, infectious laugh that had made him famous. "She sounds like she was quite a woman." "She was," Sarah said, "and she never stopped loving you, even though she thought she was protecting you by staying away." Ellen made a decision that would define this moment forever. She gestured for Matthew to come down into the audience. "Matthew," Ellen said, "I think 33 years is long enough to wait for a hug." Matthew didn't hesitate. He walked down the stage steps and straight to Sarah. When he reached her, he paused for just a moment, looking into eyes that were unmistakably his own. Then he wrapped his arms around the daughter he never knew he had. The audience erupted, but it wasn't the manufactured excitement of a game show. It was the deep, emotional response of people witnessing something real and profound. Ellen watched father and daughter hold each other for the first time, and she understood that her show had just become the setting for something much more important than entertainment. When Matthew and Sarah finally separated, Ellen invited them both onto the stage. The conversation that followed was unlike anything that had ever aired on daytime television. Sarah told them about growing up with questions she couldn't answer, about watching Matthew's movies and wondering if she saw herself in his smile. Matthew talked about the regrets every person carries, about the roads not taken, and the people who slip away before you realize how much they matter. "Sarah," Matthew said as the cameras continued to roll, "I want you to know something. Finding out about you isn't something that happened to me. It's something that happened for me. Your mother gave me the greatest gift possible, and she raised you to be brave enough to find me." Ellen pulled out her phone. "I know this is probably crazy, but would you like to call anyone? Do you have family who should know about this?" Sarah nodded. "My daughter, Emily. She's 16, and she's been asking about her grandfather her entire life." Within minutes, they had Emily on speakerphone from Austin. The conversation between Matthew and the granddaughter he didn't know existed became one of the most touching moments in television history. "Grandpa Matthew," Emily said through the phone, her young voice filled with excitement and disbelief. "Mom has your movies on DVD and she made me watch them, but she never told me why." Matthew laughed that warm laugh again. "Well, Emily, I guess now you know, and I hope you'll let me make up for 16 years of missed birthdays." Ellen removed her white blazer, the one that had become her signature for this season, and placed it around Sarah's shoulders. "This blazer," Ellen said, "has been with me for some of my most important shows. But today, it witnessed something extraordinary. The courage it takes to speak a truth that could change everything. I want you to have it as a reminder that love finds a way, even when it takes 33 years. 6 months later, Sarah Mitchell had a different last name. Matthew had walked her down the aisle at her wedding, and Emily had a grandfather who called her every Sunday and flew to Austin for every school play and soccer game. The DNA test, which Sarah finally worked up the courage to ask Matthew to take, confirmed what everyone in that studio had known the moment they saw them together. She was his daughter. The episode became the most watched in Ellen's show history. But more importantly, it started a conversation about the courage it takes to claim your truth and the family we choose to create when biology and circumstance conspire to keep us apart. Ellen learned that day that sometimes the most powerful moments happen not when you plan them, but when you're brave enough to let them unfold. When you create space for the truths that need to be spoken and the love that's been waiting 33 years to find its way home. Because sometimes all it takes is an envelope, a letter from a loving mother, and the courage to stand up in a room full of strangers and claim the family that was always meant to be yours.